Hello my friends, welcome back to Relaxing Ang Stories. I am so happy you chose to spend this time with me today. Take a slow breath in, let your body relax, and let this story carry you, back across time, to a small farm in the state of Missouri, in the year 1864, where a teenage boy is riding fast through the dark, with a pistol in his hand, and a war burning all around him. Not a soldier in a proper uniform, not a man following orders from a distant government. Just a boy on a horse, in a country tearing itself apart. Because this story begins, not in a bank, and not on a train, but on a farm. Not with greed, but with war. Not with fame, but with loss. Again and again and again. And the boy riding through that darkness will grow up to become the most famous outlaw in American history. He will be hunted by detectives, by governors, by his own former friends. He will be shot in the back by a man he trusted. And only after he is gone will the world turn him, slowly, into a legend. But first, let me tell you about the farm. Imagine a boy, maybe 15 years old, son of a Baptist preacher, who had already died when the boy was small. The farm is in Clay County, Missouri. The family owns enslaved people and grows hemp and tobacco. The Civil War has already begun, and Missouri, a border state, is one of the most violent, divided places in the entire country. The boy is not gentle. He is not patient. He has watched Union soldiers raid his family's farm. He has watched his stepfather strung up by the neck, then cut down half alive, in front of him, as soldiers tried to force him to reveal where Confederate guerrillas were hiding. His name is Jesse Woodson James. And in that burning, lawless border country, something in him hardened. A grievance, a hatred, a willingness to answer violence with violence. Stay with, because this is a story about what happens when a war never really ends inside a man, and he carries it with him for the rest of his life. Jesse James was born on the 5th of September, 1847, near Kearney, Missouri. His father, Robert, was a hemp farmer and Baptist minister who left for the California gold fields when Jesse was small, and died out there before Jesse turned 4. His mother, Zerelda, was fierce, strong-willed, and fiercely loyal to the Confederate cause. At 16, Jesse followed his older brother Frank into the war, not as a regular soldier, as a guerrilla. He rode with a band of pro-Confederate raiders known as bushwhackers, led by men like William Bloody Bill Anderson. These were not ordinary battles. These were ambushes, raids, and massacres, fought in the shadows of a war that, in Missouri, had almost no rules at all. He was shot in the chest during the war and nearly died. He recovered. He kept fighting. When the Civil War ended in 1865, most soldiers went home and tried to rebuild their lives. Jesse James did not. He and his brother Frank, along with former guerrilla comrades, turned their wartime skills toward something new. In February of 1866, a group believed to include the James brothers robbed the Clay County Savings Association in Liberty, Missouri. Historians consider it, likely, the first daylight bank robbery in American peacetime history. It was the beginning of a criminal career that would last nearly 17 years. Now I must tell you about the James Younger gang. Jesse and Frank joined forces with another set of brothers, the Youngers, Cole, Jim, John, and Bob. Together they became one of the most notorious outlaw gangs the country had ever seen. They robbed banks across Missouri, Kentucky, Iowa, and Texas. In 1873, they turned to a new target: trains. They pulled up rails. They forced locomotives to stop or derail. They boarded passenger cars and demanded the safe be opened. Newspapers began printing their exploits, sometimes exaggerating them, sometimes inventing them entirely. And slowly, something strange began to happen. People started to like them. In the years after the Civil War, many in Missouri still resented the Union, still resented the banks and railroads owned by powerful Northern interests. A newspaper editor named John Newman Edwards, a former Confederate soldier himself, began writing articles that painted Jesse James not as a criminal, but as a modern-day Robin Hood, a defiant Southern rebel striking back against Yankee banks and Yankee railroads. It was not entirely true. There is little evidence Jesse James ever gave money to the poor. But the story, the legend, began to grow faster than the truth could keep up with it. In 1874, Jesse married his first cousin, Zerelda Mims, a woman he had loved since childhood. They would go on to have 2 children who survived into adulthood, a son named Jesse Edwards James and a daughter named Mary. He lived for years under false names. Thomas Howard, J.D. Howard, a quiet, ordinary-seeming family man in a quiet, ordinary-seeming house, who happened every so often to disappear for a few days and rob a train. But the danger never stopped closing in. In 1874, the Pinkerton National Detective Agency was hired to hunt the gang down. The Pinkertons were relentless and increasingly ruthless. In January of 1875, they raided the James family farm at night and threw an incendiary device into the house. It exploded. Jesse's young half-brother, Archie, was killed. His mother, Zerelda, lost part of her arm. The attack backfired completely. Public sympathy for Jesse James, already strong, grew even stronger. He had become, in the eyes of many, a wronged man, fighting back against powerful enemies who would even attack his own mother. Then, in 1876, came Northfield. The gang rode into Northfield, Minnesota, to rob the First National Bank. It went wrong almost immediately. A cashier inside refused to open the safe and was shot dead. Armed townspeople, alerted to the robbery, opened fire from the street. In the chaos, several gang members were killed or wounded. The younger brothers were captured. Only Jesse and Frank escaped, riding for weeks through hostile territory, wounded, exhausted, hunted by posses the entire way. The gang, as it had existed, was finished. Jesse rebuilt. He formed a new gang with new, less experienced men. But something had changed. He grew more paranoid, more isolated, more willing to turn on the very people around him if he suspected betrayal. He moved his family under yet another false name to a quiet house in St. Joseph, Missouri. And it was there that the end came. The governor of Missouri, Thomas Crittenden, had grown desperate to end the James legend once and for all. He offered a large reward for Jesse's capture, dead or alive. 2 brothers in Jesse's own gang, Robert and Charles Ford, secretly made a deal with the governor's men. On the morning of the 3rd of April, 1882, inside his own home, Jesse James took off his gun belt to dust a picture hanging on the wall, trusting the men in the room with him completely. Robert Ford drew his pistol and shot Jesse James in the back of the head. He was 34 years old. The news spread across the country within hours. Newspapers ran the story on their front pages. Crowds gathered outside the little house in St. Joseph, some of them, it is said, chipping pieces of wallpaper away as souvenirs. And Robert Ford, the man who killed him, did not become a hero. He became, almost instantly, a villain in the public imagination. The dirty little coward, as a popular ballad would soon call him, that shot Mr. Howard and laid Jesse James in his grave. Here is where the story turns. Here is the part that still surprises people every time I tell it. Jesse James, in his own lifetime, was a killer. He and his gang were responsible for the deaths of bank employees, train employees, and bystanders over nearly 2 decades of robbery. He was not, by any honest measure, a hero. And yet, almost from the moment he died, the legend took over from the man. Ballads were written about him within weeks. Dime novels, cheap, sensational little books sold on street corners, turned him into a dashing, romantic outlaw, riding for justice against corrupt banks and railroads. Hollywood, decades later, made film after film about him, casting him again and again as a misunderstood rebel, a Southern gentleman forced into crime by a war he never asked for. Today, Jesse James is one of the most recognized names in all of American history. Tourists visit his boyhood home in Kearney, Missouri. Tourists visit the small house in St. Joseph where he was killed, and can still see, some say, the bullet hole in the wall. His story has been told and retold in books, songs, and films for over a century. He was not a good man, but he became something almost more powerful than a good man. He became a myth, a symbol people could pour their own anger, their own resentments, their own longing for rebellion into. And so, my friend, the story of the boy who rode through the burning darkness of the Missouri border war comes softly to its close. Jesse James was shaped by violence before he ever chose it for himself. He lost his father as a small child. He watched his stepfather nearly hanged in front of him. He fought in a war with no rules, at an age when he should have still been in school. And when the war ended, he never really put the gun down again. He spent 17 years as one of the most hunted men in America. He was betrayed, in the end, by a man inside his own home, a man he trusted enough to turn his back on. But somehow out of all that violence, all that betrayal, a legend was born. Not because the man deserved it, but because people needed a story about defiance, a story about a poor Southern farm boy standing up, however wrongly, against powerful banks and powerful railroads. That is the heart of this story, and you, my friend, you are building something too, right now, something quieter, and much better than a legend built on violence. You are sitting here, learning a new language, one word at a time, one sentence at a time. And maybe it feels slow. Maybe it feels like no one is watching. No ballad is being written about your progress. But every word you learn, every story you finish, every quiet hour you spend practicing when no one is applauding, that is your own kind of legend, being built, brick by brick, sentence by sentence, into something real. You don't need a myth, you only need to keep going. Keep listening. Keep learning. Keep moving forward. This is Relaxing Yang Stories. Tell me, my friend, what part of Jesse James's story stayed with you? Was it the farmhouse raid, and the brother who never came home from it? Was it Northfield, and the gang that rode away from a robbery gone wrong? Or was it that final morning, in a quiet house in St. Joseph, when a man he trusted turned and fired? Leave a comment below. I read every single one. There are many more stories waiting here, and I will be ready when you come back. Until next time, take care of yourself, and never ever stop moving forward.